Hello, you're listening to the Saluki Gamescast. This is episode 31 for December 9th, 2022. My name is Justin Young. Joining me, as always, is Alicia Utecht, Ryan Freels, and OJ Duncan. How's everyone doing?
It's finals.
Is it that time of the semester?
It is that time of the semester.
I don't think I've ever heard that before. What does that mean?
No, actually, like compared to last spring, this semester is just like so much more relaxed for me. So I don't even really too much feel it's that time of the semester.
Well, OJ, I think we all owe you a congratulations. You have some good news from this week.
Thank you. Yeah. So I found out that I passed my prelims. So I am now officially a PhD candidate rather than a PhD student. And that means that I have to do a prospectus, which means it's just like an extended research proposal for what my dissertation will be. I'll get that approved. I'll defend it. It'll be approved. Well, hopefully, fingers crossed.
It will.
And then then I'll write a dissertation. And then once that's done, I defend that. And then I'll actually have a PhD finally.
And then we'll have to call you Dr. OJ.
Yes, absolutely.
One step closer to Dr. Duncan.
Yeah, I'm just going to change my name to Doctor, so I'll be Doctor.
No, I know someone who legally changed her name to Doctor. Don't do it.
Yeah, and so with all of that, I don't have a meeting to talk about my prospectus for a week, so this is like the least work I've had in my entire academic career right now is this week. Is like I got everything I needed done, so I'm just sitting waiting for people to ask me for help. So it's that time of the semester for me is that time where I can just sit back and look for work to do because I don't have enough.
So if you're listening and you have extra work to do,
send your emails to OJ.
OJ is willing and waiting. All right, we're going to jump right into things because we have a ton of news from the Game Awards last night. But let's start off with what you've been playing. Alicia, what have you been playing?
I will give you 3 guesses.
Does it involve a Squirtle?
Actually, no. But it is Pokemon Violet. I'm still...
There's no Squirtle?
There is no Squirtle.
Oh.
It makes me sad. I'm sure it'll be there eventually, but not right now. But I'm working through the post game right now. I started going through. After you beat the main storyline, you can go to different shrines to get kind of the secondary legendaries, and so
it's a Final Fantasy game.
a little bit. But like Generation 2, you had Ho-Oh and Lugia as the box legendaries, and then Suicune, Entei, and Raikou were the secondary ones. So this is the secondary ones of this. I caught the first one this morning, and I just have to say, the music for those battles is top tier. Like, that might be my favorite track off the OST yet. And this is after a full week of listening to a spoiler battle theme that happens in the final big boss of the main storyline.
Okay. So really good music.
Phenomenal music. Just, some of the tracks get a little repetitive after a while, but that one, that's going to be on repeat for a week. And the other cool thing with that is I was hanging out with friends on Twitch last night, and they were doing Terra raids. So I finally paid for Nintendo Switch Online. That way I could do Terra raids with my friends. So now hopefully I'll have more games to play without needing to spend $60 to get a new game.
Well, you'll have plenty of Super Nintendo and NES games to play.
That is all I need. Give me all the nostalgia.
All right. Is that it?
That's been it for me.
All right. Ryan?
Okay, so a couple things. First off, just more Marvel Snap. A lot of Marvel Snap. But I've really been enjoying, the different ways you can combine cards to make different types of decks. I tend to like and it's a fairly easier one, but it's just also the one I kind of have fun with. I like to play, decks that constantly build on each other's power, with characters that help power up other characters' power and makes them stronger and stuff. But you can also do decks that are built around, destroying or getting rid of your own cards to further empower other cards to make sure other cards can get played. And there's also decks built around moving your cards around your different locations in the game. And I've just been having a lot of fun, like, seeing, like, the different ways you can play this. And that's mainly what I have to say about that. But like many people, really, really love the combo of Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. That's a pretty powerful team. But aside from that, because I've been trying to validate the idea of getting the Atari 50th anniversary thing. Mm-hmm. So just to like see if I like some of the older games enough, I went ahead and went to like the NES emulator on Switch and just tried playing the old Donkey Kong games. My favorite was Donkey Kong 3, actually. I like it. Kind of makes me think of like Missile
Command.
Command.
Black sheep of the family.
Yeah, I like it the most. Yeah. It kind of makes me think of like Missile Command or something like that a little bit. Like, I think that's where you're trying to like fire like missiles at things coming from above, right?
Right.
And it's like that, but with instead of like like guns or anything, it's a guy with like pesticide or some poison spray trying to spray it at Donkey Kong, and he can also switch it out with like a flamethrower, escalating things quickly. And while you're doing this, you also are dealing with the possibility that if you don't keep getting him, Donkey Kong might drop down and beat you up. But also you have bugs that will act like bugs that will get in the way, and they'll do different things. Like bees will like if you need to hit the bees so that they don't like fly into you and kill you. But also when you hit them, they'll like send a bunch of like an array of spikes, kind of getting a bullet hell vibe to it. Also, there's certain bugs that depending on where you can't kill them, but you'll pause them, and they might pause in places that makes it harder for you to hit DK while he's up above you. I like the different challenges that it gives you with like the different bugs and how they might get in the way. I think it's like the first Donkey Kong in that there's 4 stages you can pass, and after you've passed those, like it just becomes like harder versions of those. I don't remember how far I got, but I beat the first 4. And I also played Donkey Kong Jr. The less we talk about that, the better. I did not do good at that one. I don't want to talk about it. And then I played Donkey Kong, so I kind of did things backwards, which would be my second favorite. And I mean, that doesn't need much talking about. That's a pretty easily known game, but you're just jumping on platforms trying to reach Pauline, and rescue her from Donkey Kong, or I guess Cranky Kong as he is now. But same thing, beat the first 4 levels, and I don't know how many levels I beat after that, but I did get to the point where Donkey Kong falls through the different platforms, like knocks his head, and you then have a big heart pop up between you and Pauline. So I got like the main 4 levels. It was just like about getting harder versions of those afterwards. I enjoyed going back to these. I think I've kind of justified getting the Atari 50. Maybe I don't know if I enjoyed these that much that I'd want to keep playing them, but I still want that game just because of the documentary aspect of it. Mm-hmm. But favorite one is the lesser-known Donkey Kong 3. That was just the one that I enjoyed the most. Poor Stanley. You never see him in any games after this one. He's the protagonist of it. Finally, I played a very little bit of the demo for Harvestella. I'm going to keep playing this before I say much about it, because I just basically all I've done is I've gotten my character sort of made and gotten them introduced to the town, and I've done a little bit of the farming so far. But I'm enjoying it. My main concern is that this is a game I want to love, and I might only kind of like it. And that's my main concern. I have to play more of it to decide, but the game is visually... Some people had problems with like it kind of having a softness to it that they thought was like maybe a little like last gen, but I think it actually fits the game's style. The artwork for when characters are talking that pops up at the bottom of the screen, that might be aesthetically the best part, though. Just like the ways the characters are illustrated is just beautiful and amazing. The big thing about this was, the big thing that made me want to get it, though, aside from I liked the idea of it beforehand, of it being like a combination of farming sim and action RPG, is the fact that you can make your character non-binary. I can see that some people have frustrations that you have a limited set of models and that you can just switch between 2 masculine and feminine voices. But I like how all the models are like kind of feminine in some sense, and you can maybe read them as a feminine, masculine figure. And I like how that combined with the fact that you can select non-binary pronouns. I think while I can see the appeal of having more possibilities by all means, I do like how just the limitations they do it just holds it to being a queer game. And I do really love being able to select non-binary like I am, and I do like, and it is so strangely beautiful how it feels to like see characters talk and refer to the character with they them pronouns. So I want to love this game just for having those things. I want this to be like the great game where the awesome game where you can be non-binary. The only thing is I could see some of the gameplay itself having limitations and restrictions on it that are more frustrating than fun or interesting. Because I know that there's like, you are working by a clock in this game, and if like the clock gets too late, like you can be in the middle of something, you might be at the last boss in a dungeon from what I understand, and I haven't gotten to this part yet. I was looking at other reviews. And your character might get knocked out before it sees the end of the dungeon because, midnight hit, so you're knocked out and you're sent back to bed and you've been fined. And I don't know how much I would enjoy something like that. I do like the idea, though, still of combining. I think some of the critiques is it's not got the best action for an action RPG. It's not got the best farming for a farming simulator, but there is something cool in that you have both. And I've played a little bit of the farming sim part so far, and I'm fine with it. I like it. I don't know how in love with it I'll be, but it is like a step up from, say, and this isn't a knock on it, but it's like a step up on it from Animal Crossing. And if I'm fine with the farming sim and Animal Crossing, which is very simple and basic, like, and again, I'm not saying this is an insult, it's just that's a very like casual, chill game, then I might not need much of a complex like farming sim beyond that for me personally. And I like the idea of being able to switch back and forth between that and the action RPG to kind of reduce the sense of redundancy. But the only concern I might have is if neither of those parts prove to be too interesting in the long run, it doesn't matter that much if they balance each other out because they still need to themselves stay interesting. But those are just concerns I have right now, not having played much of it. Right now, I'm just happy that you can play a non-binary character, and I'm looking forward to see like where I go with this game. Because I very much enjoy the look of this game. I think it's a very beautiful looking game. Again, super happy to have a character that can be non-binary. And I like how like femme to androgynous all the character models are. And I like being able to use that with the non-binary pronouns and with like a more masculine voice. I like being able to combine those things in something that feels familiar to me. I think it's a very lovely game in those respects, but we'll see where the gameplay goes. But Harvestelia just started the demo.
All right. Well, I guess the good news is if it doesn't work out, if you don't find it all that compelling, then there's about 500 other farming games that you can try out in its place. But that's really cool about the non-binary aspect of it because I'll be honest, like I know games have started getting better about offering, options to choose being gay or lesbian, but non-binary is not something that I feel like a lot of games have gotten good about offering that as a character choice and everything. So, hopefully that's something as you start to see a few games offer it, other games will catch on and start offering that as an option.
Pokemon, Game Freak, I hope you're listening. Except maybe don't do that with a game with Professor Oak. The idea of two genders nearly broke that man. Let's not add more for him. if the internet comics are accurate, he's like boy, girl, hi.
Though props to Professor Oak that in the 90s he was asking you to tell him what gender you were.
That is true. You know what? Professor Oak, you're pretty woke.
He was woke for his time, right?
Yep.
All right.
We all be woke like the mighty oak.
OJ, what have you been playing?
So I recently, and I wasn't here last week to talk to Amelia about it, but I recently started playing Final Fantasy XIV again.
Oh, she's so sad that you weren't there to talk about it.
So my husband played. He's at like end game content. He has like a static group, and they do a lot of the really high end raids. And So there's stuff that you can get in game if you refer someone to the game and they play for a certain amount of time. So initially I started playing because he needed somebody who was going for like 6 months or something to get all of these silver chocobo feathers from that referral in order to get everything in the game. And then I stopped halfway through because I didn't really have time to play it, and it got a little like complicated. And then he was talking about the silver chocobo feathers again. I was like, you know what? I have a little bit of time now. I can start playing it again. Went back to the game. So I was level 73. I know Amelia mentioned Stormblood. I'm at the end of Stormblood is when I quit, and the class completely changed. So I always played a summoner. Really enjoy I enjoy the idea of summoners, and I really liked how it was playing as I was going through as a summoner. Come back, they did a very major overhaul. And so it took a little bit of time to get used to, because originally Summoner was a damage over time class. It had a lot of dot spells, and then your pet did a lot of damage over time too. Like, it was essentially just a big dot is what your pet was. And now it's a direct damage class, and it is more about summoning than it was before. And so you initially summon Bahamut, and Bahamut does a bunch of damage, and then you get energy for fire, wind, and earth. And then using that energy, you then summon Ifrit, Garuda, and Titan, and then they do a bunch of stuff. But it's very, very, very much simplified over how it used to be. Because the summoner class used to have a really long like chain of stuff that you had to do to get full damage out of it. Now it's pretty easy, which is kind of good coming back, because I was like, I haven't played in like 3 or 4 years, and I come back and it's like, oh no, well, this is pretty easy to move. But also I kind of miss the intricacy that was in the class too. And I love a damage over time class, and so I was a little upset that it turned into like a direct damage class. But otherwise, I gave myself a week to try and get used to it, and started doing random groups for dungeons to progress the mainline story quest. And I'm doing pretty good. And then one of the battles of the ones that I just did, it had the Mist Dragon from Final Fantasy 4 that I think that Amelia mentioned something about. And I was very excited to see the Mist Dragon. I was like, ooh, this is really exciting. And so I finally am at the end of Stormblood, because like the way that they do it is they have a big expansion, and there's a bunch of little smaller patches until they come to the next big expansion. And so I'm finally over the post-Stormblood stuff. I have the one final dungeon, and then I get to start on which one is it? Stormbringer? No. I can't remember exactly what the next expansion is called. It's not Endwalker, but it's the one before it. Shadowbringers, maybe?
Might be.
Yeah.
Shadowbringers sounds
right.
familiar.
Yeah, okay. So I think it's
right.
Shadowbringers. I get to move into that one, because Stormblood, I know a lot of people talked about, was pretty boring, and I think that's one of the reasons why I quit it too, is because I was just like, there's so much here and I'm bored. But Shadowbringers, I think, gets a lot more exciting, so I'm very excited to get there.
All right. Anything else?
Playing a lot more Pokemon Go. They've had so many events just happening back to back to back, that I'm not getting bored with it. Like before, I was like, I'm just catching a bunch of Pokemon. But now the Pokemon are changing a lot, because all of these events have different special Pokemon that pop out. So really, really, really happy with how it's going.
And we should note you're also saving up to invest in Marvel Snap, since they added the 90s X-Men.
Yeah, okay. So I finally pulled back, because I was spending way too much time with it. So I pulled back from Marvel Snap, and I was like, I didn't even play it for about 2 weeks. And then you post in a group chat about, they're bringing the 90s X-Men cards in now. And I'm like, well, shit, now they're getting all my money. Like, I better get some Christmas money so I can spend it on these 90s X-Men cards.
They're really expensive.
Yeah.
I'll say that screenshot you sent for Gambit and Rouge, it was $20.
I think it's 30.
30?
Yeah.
I'm like, what happened to this being a game you could play without having to put money into it?
See, they use their claws, they hook you in, and then they're like, here's something that you're going to want because of nostalgia for $30. And then,
That's how they get you.
yeah, we're
Gotcha
gonna buy
gaming.
It's not even, but the thing is, you can still get those characters.
You just can't get that look.
Yeah, that variant, as they call them. You can't get them without spending the money. So you're really paying $30 for a costume change on a card. Like, you know, like it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I completely agree. I mean, $10 for the two of them, that's a lot of money, but okay. But $30 is kind of crazy.
Yeah. And if I didn't have such a huge crush on Gambit from the 90s X-Men, I probably wouldn't pay it, but I'm going to have to now.
I think Gambit was so many of our first love. Like,
Yeah.
he's up there. That was up there for me.
Yeah. When I was maybe 16 or 17, I can't remember exactly when, but I was 90s X-Men Gambit for Halloween.
I love it.
Yep.
I mean, I guess he's a pretty fitting character for a card game about Marvel too. Like,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Got to start with the best character for the card game and the best ship.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so who knows what they'll do next? But they've been rolling in like different variants. So like they had an Alex Ross. If you don't know who Alex Ross is, he's most famous for doing like these ultra realistic sort of drawings of comic book characters.
Did a graphic novel called Kingdom Come.
Yeah, like that's probably the art he's most famous for from the cover of that and everything. But yeah, so like they're getting more of those different variants in. I think in the group chat I said, you know, at some point, as we've talked about, they're going to do the MCU versions. Like there's going to be, I don't know if they'll try to get people in there with their mask on so they don't have to pay Robert Downey Jr. Like, hey, look, it's Iron Man, but he has a mask on, so we don't have to pay him. I don't know how they'll do that, but like, I mean, you can see that coming down the road because then what can they charge for that?
Right.
You know, if they're charging $30 for the cartoon, the 90s cartoon versions, and they don't even call them that.
Right.
Like, I forgot what they call them, like the hero version or something.
Yeah.
Like, they don't even label them as the 90s cartoon version, though that clearly is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and it'd be one thing too, even if like it was different cards. But like you said, if it's just a costume change, then really,
well, I mean,
like I could see $10 for different cards,
but you know, like
but
Fortnite,
$30 for a costume change.
Fortnite and Warzone, Call of Duty Warzone, have been doing this with, you know, skins.
That's why we all make fun of Fortnite.
Yeah, but they make billions of dollars.
And like I said, I pulled back and I haven't really been playing it that much. So I haven't been through, although I know some people who made it all the way to the end. Or not end, but like of getting the new cards and new characters and stuff.
Right.
Was there an Agatha Harkness in there anywhere?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, I think I have that card.
Okay.
She is painful to deal with too.
Oh.
Yeah, she takes over and plays your hand for you.
Oh, okay. I like that. So if they get an MCU Agatha Harkness, I will pay anything to get that one.
Do not say that out
I'll
loud.
say, clearly they're listening to our podcast. Don't give them ideas.
Yeah, Disney took the idea for the Disney Animal Crossing game from here. We know.
Yeah.
We all know it.
Yeah.
Next thing
We
is,
know
like,
they're listening to us.
there's going to be a statement on the next podcast. Like, Disney has recently purchased this podcast. they booted off Ryan for sure for saying that.
Hey,
Welcome to the Saluki Gamescast, sponsored by Disney.
if Disney wants to sponsor this podcast, I will sell out in a heartbeat.
The art of selling out.
Give us some of that Disney money.
Yeah,
we
I
can
will.
start up a whole department with that money.
Yeah.
True story.
The only company with official U.S. minted money that has Mickey Mouse on it.
Disney studies.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, you want to attract students, that'll do it.
There's a Buffy studies program.
Is it a whole program or one class?
It's a whole program.
Where?
I'm not entirely sure. I'll figure it out. I'll find out and do it next time. We have a Buffy class here, but
I know we have
a different place. There's a Buffy studies program.
Yeah, I know a lot of places that do like fandom classes.
Right.
I think I've seen a small number of like Harry Potter programs, but
like
I've
full
never-
programs or a course?
full programs. I think I've seen like 3 of them over the last 20 years, but
I told you I have a friend who teaches the rhetoric of Harry Potter. So, all right. So, OJ, was that it?
Yes.
Okay. So I've been playing a little bit of Marvel Snap. I have not given in to paying $30. I don't think they'll get me to pay $30, so I would really like to have those cards. If they were charging $2 or $3, they could probably get me to pay for the 90s X-Men, but $30 is too much. Too rich for my blood. I have been playing a couple other things. I've continued playing Soccer Story. I mentioned this last week. I had just played about an hour or two at that time. This is a really fun little role-playing game where you like go around your town, and soccer has been banned, and the only people who are allowed to control soccer is this giant corporation, which is very clearly standing in for FIFA. There's lots of little jokes that make it clear that they're kind of mocking FIFA with it. And then, like, there aren't battles, but you do have to play soccer games. And then it becomes a little sort of like 8-bit style, maybe early 16-bit style soccer game that you play. And those are fun, though they can be incredibly kind of frustrating and difficult at times. But the game itself is actually a lot of fun. You go around, and so like sometimes you're having to collect things, sometimes you're having to do stealth sequences, sometimes you're having to find secret entrances to buildings by like kind of going around and looking for secret paths and that sort of thing. And so there's a lot of diversity. Some of it's kind of busy work, but in that style of almost like a 16-bit RPG where, hey, go find these 5 items and come back and bring them to me, and I'll give you an item in exchange. It's fun, and I think it would be a really... I do believe it's out on Switch, but it seems like the perfect fit for Switch. It's certainly Switch can handle it graphically, and it's like... it's that sort of game that you would be able to pick up and play for a few minutes, while you're riding the bus or something, and then put it down and come back to. And there's no complex controls. You're not going to get confused about where you left off or what missions you're on and that sort of thing. So that's called Soccer Story. I think it's really cool and worth checking out. And I've continued to play it, and hopefully we'll finish it eventually. The other game I've been playing is Midnight Fight Express. Midnight Fight Express is a brawler, sort of beat 'em up style game. So think Final Fight kind of in style, except this is played from a sort of isometric overhead view, and it is borrowing, I would say, from John Wick in its style. So it's a lot of hand-to-hand combat, but then you can pick up weapons, including everything from like baseball bats to knives to wrenches to guns to samurai swords. But it's all this very fast kinetic action. So like you'll walk up and start hitting a guy, and another guy will come up behind you, and you have a counter button. So in that way, it's borrowing from like, say, Batman, Arkham Asylum. And you'll grab that guy, and like maybe he has a baseball bat, and you break his arm, and you steal the baseball bat, and you turn around and hit him in the head with it. And then you can turn around, and another guy will have a gun shooting at you. You can toss the baseball bat across the stage and hit him. And so like when you beat a level, it creates an animated GIF that you can download. And then obviously you can share it on social media. So like you can like make these really cool looking fight scenes and everything. And when you kind of get into the zone and all that's working, it looks amazing. And you feel like a total badass.
Yeah.
This just matches what OJ does to me in the parking lot. I don't know.
Well, look, he's got to take his ideals from somewhere.
Didn't you know violent video games make people violent?
That's the message of this podcast, everybody.
Towards you.
Hey, there's Ryan. Get them.
Justin, what system is this on?
So it's on PC, it's on PlayStation and Xbox as well.
Okay.
I do not believe it's on Switch, but I actually am not 100% sure on that.
Okay.
So OJ is looking at his phone. Maybe he'll check and find that out for sure. I would say, and then you're playing through different environments. So like just a wild number of environments. So like you're going into bars, and you're going and playing at like piers and airports, and you go into a video game development company at one point, and the video game developers are having a pillow fight in their office. So like you pick up a pillow and you beat them to death with pillows.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
But like all this is done in this very stylistic way, and you can like use the environment. So like you can grab a guy and smash his head into the wall, and kick people off of the pier and they drown and this sort of stuff. All of that's really cool. And that being the main element of the game is really fun and really exciting and neat to do. There are some bad elements. One thing is the levels are incredibly small. So like there's an entire level that takes place in like a bathroom. And so like you're smashing people into urinals and stuff, and that's kind of fun and cool. But like you walk into the bathroom, you beat through all the guys, you leave the bathroom. That's the end of the level. And so there's like 40 levels in the game, but some of them are incredibly short, incredibly small. Some of them are much larger, much more expansive, and that's fun and exciting when you get one of those. But some of them are incredibly tiny, just like 1 or 2 rooms. Now, there's a lot of guys to fight in that, but still, you're in a very kind of contained space. The other thing I'll say about it is there's a story. The story is not very good.
What?
Yeah, I know. That's a shock. But like you are being fed the story via somebody talking to you on a drone. So there's a little drone following you around, but none of this is voiced. So it's just endless text, and this drone interrupts you all the time. Like every time you walk into a new part of a stage, the drone has like 5 lines of dialogue.
It's the Navi problem.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, that's the perfect example. And you're just like, shut up. I don't care. Your lines aren't funny. I mean, there are a couple of funny lines that I've read, but like, you know, like out of 50 lines, you might get 1 or 2 that makes you kind of chuckle a little. And it's just not worth it. Go ahead. OJ did it. Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah. Wait. I was just saying, so it is on PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and Steam.
Okay, it is on Switch.
Okay. I don't know if I want to deal with Navi, though.
I mean, that's really hard to deal with. But if you can, when you replay the levels, so you can replay them, and it adds objectives when you replay. So it'll be things like, don't take any damage, don't die, don't beat every game developer with the pillow, don't use any other weapons. And so like that's kind of neat that it has that ability. And when you do that, I did it on a couple of levels, it does offer the option to turn off all dialogue. So that's cool, but it's only once you have beat the level once and you're going back and replaying it, you are given that option, which I would never replay a level if I couldn't turn off the dialogue. So, I think it's unfortunate that those things are in there. And I feel like they focused on fewer levels, but longer, and also focused on getting rid of a lot of that story. And I understand it's a small developer. They maybe don't have the budget to hire voice actors, but just in an action game, I don't want anything interrupting that. Like when I go through a room and I've beat 20 guys in that room, I'm kind of on an adrenaline high. I want to get into the next room and fight more guys. And I don't want like the game to suddenly come to a complete stop and there's going to be long strings of dialogue. That really kills that. And I feel like if you had that voiced over, at least you could have that happening as you move into the next section.
Or even if, you look back at Sonic Adventure 2, you had Omochao follow you. So anytime you had a forced tutorial, it wasn't like you had to stop the game. You got to have them come along with you. So even if they could do something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it is coming along with you. It's kind of with you the entire time, but it just...
But if it stops you moving in any of that, that's where I'm like, it doesn't have to do that.
Right. It's unfortunate because the actual combat, the actual gameplay is a whole lot of fun. And, again, like you can upgrade your character, add new abilities and counters and all that sort of stuff in between levels. And as you power up, I mean, you do. Like, again, I think I said this about Metal Hellsinger earlier, that Metal Hellsinger at its best is like what you want it at 12 years old. right? Like it is a heavy metal first person shooter, and look, oh my God, there's a devil. You know, you're gonna have to fight the devil, and then there's angels, and they're like firing rocket launchers at you, and you're like, yeah, this is awesome. I'm gonna draw this on the inside of my history book. Like, is that sort of cool? And this game captures that as well. Like at its best, you feel like a total badass when you go through a room and you're, you know, a guy's throwing a chair at you, and when he throws it, you kick it back into his face, and you're like picking up a gun and shooting a guy across the level and then throwing the gun into another guy. You know, I guess in that way, it's really capturing the game Super Hot very well, which was a first-person shooter where time only moved when your character moved, and then they did a port to VR, which is amazing, one of the best VR games. That game makes you feel like a total badass. You know, like you're in the Matrix, you're in a John Wick film. This does the same thing, but some of those things just kind of drag it down a little bit more than I would like. So, but still, cool game. I think it's worth checking out, particularly if you get it like cheap and everything. If that's the sort of game, if that sounds interesting to you, I think it's worth your time. And I'm going to finish it. I'm over halfway through. So, you know, maybe when I finish it, my opinion will change some more. But that's basically it for me. So let's get into the news, because we have a lot of news to cover. The Game Awards were last night, and man, I feel like this Game Awards was more newsworthy than last year's, at least. So there was a lot of cool stuff that came out of it. Let's talk about the Mario trailer first. There was a brand new Mario, I guess not trailer, it was a scene from the actual film that featured Mario and Toad. And this was Toad kind of leading Mario through to the castle for the first time, but they go through, I guess, Toad City first. And so it has them running through the city streets, and there's all these little toads running around and everything. We get more of Chris Pratt talking, but again, very little. Like Toad talks a whole lot more than Chris Pratt talks.
I'm
as
fine
Mario.
with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As he should.
It's weird though, right? Because like they went out and hired him, and now it feels like they went, "Oh no, people hate him as the voice.
Who knew?
Let's cut his dialogue." But this is an animated film. Like they had to be pretty far into development
Yeah.
before they had the opportunity to like start. You know, I don't feel like they went back and were like, "Okay, let's cut half his dialogue out of the film." But it does feel like they hired him with the foreknowledge he's not going to talk a whole lot.
I feel like this is going to be like, people joke about the, well, excuse me, princess, being the reason that Link is silent all the time. I feel like this is going to be like, well, this is why Mario's silent all the time.
And I would like it to actually be made a point in the show. Every time Mario goes to speak, when he opens his mouth, someone like puts their finger on his lips and is like, psst, psst, no, nobody has to hear this.
People should just talk over him.
Yeah.
Like as soon as he starts to talk, he's like, well, that's not, you know, Luigi should be like, let's get a pizza. You're right, Mario. That's a great idea.
Oh, man.
Yeah, you know, it looks nice. But it's just, you know, I think we had this exchange that the biggest fear of this film is that it's going to feel kind of empty and hollow.
Yeah.
And it's a whole lot of sight gags of, do you know this reference? Do you know this reference? And the scene that they showed is, you know, them riding platforms, them running across bricks suspended in the air. And you're like, that's cute, but that's cute for like the first 5 minutes, 10 minutes of the film. Yeah. Then you have to have something more than that.
Yeah. And it's like, especially, I think we've talked before, I forget if on the podcast or just in our group chat, but the fact that it's an Illumination film. You know, Illumination can do decent movies. You know, the first Despicable Me, the first Sing movie, both still pretty good kids movies, even as an adult. But then they also have some that are even their first entry into a potential series that's just awful.
Like the Minions movie?
Oh, God. Minions, Secret Life of Pets, The Grinch, like, all. And it's like, if it was like DreamWorks or Pixar doing this, I would have more faith. But the fact that it's Illumination and they just have a track record of either decent or bad, I'm like, okay.
Yeah, like the Grinch was just like such a soulless and that's like one of my favorite like of the Christmas shorts. I mean, because that's Chuck Jones animation, that's Boris Karloff's voice. That's like doing like such an empty, hollow version of that is just like sacrilege to me. I mean, it doesn't matter in the end, I guess, in the grand scheme. I still have the original. It's not like it ruined the original. I'm not going to be like, you made this version I didn't like, you ruined it. But it's not good. And I was looking at this thing of like Mario walking around Mushroom Kingdom. I wasn't really impressed. Like, it wasn't interesting. And there's certain little things that just make it already feel hollow to me. Like, you have the idea of them going to, like, it looks like the Toads are going to the ATMs when they're punching the coin blocks and they're getting their money. But it also looks like they're attached to ATM-like machines, which just is kind of needlessly, like, it's gray and bland, and it's needlessly taking the personality and the magic out of it for me. That's my feeling anyway.
Yeah.
Like, and like, it's just not, it should be a bright and colorful world, and that kind of... It's still overall bright and colorful, but that takes a little bit away from it in a way that's like just adding needless, bland detail. Which is feels kind of weird saying, but that's what it is.
Well, it's the Zootopia problem, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
is the entire joke going to be that, look, this is a different world than ours, but it's exactly the same, except toads inhabit it.
Yeah.
And, Zootopia actually ends up with a pretty decent story, and it works okay, but like so much of the, that style of film is, well, look, here's how the bank operates in this world. And you're like, okay, like,
Okay, sure.
Like, banks aren't interesting to begin with. Why would it be interesting because a shark's running it?
Yeah.
And like, I feel like the whole movie, just from like the second trailer, is going to be like, you know what this thing is, right? You've played this thing, and that doesn't have to be bad. It's okay to be referential, and something can do that and be interesting. Like, intertextuality studies is a thing where media draws influences from the media before it in like cool and meaningful ways, but I don't feel like this is what this is going to be.
Well, it's the difference between having Easter eggs and just making an hour and a half of references.
Yeah.
Like, you watch the first Sonic movie, and the fact that they have a Sonic drawing in there is freaking beautiful. Like, that's a great of like, oh, you know this, right? You caught that? But like you said, just everything in this feels like it's going to be, oh, you know this, and oh, look, we made Peach a badass, and oh, look, Toad is funnier than Mario, and it's just, it doesn't feel like you would want a movie like this to be a love letter to one of the greatest and most influential video game franchises of all time. And it just doesn't feel like it.
Well, and the thing we've talked about before is like what makes Mario so memorable. And it's that aspect of, going on an adventure, right? And really the 3D games really capture that. You're going and you're exploring this new world. And if you are, again, making this new world just referential to the real world, who cares? Like, that's not that interesting. You might as well do what Sonic did and just bring Sonic into our world and set it here and everything. Because if you were just going to, take the Green Hill Zone and fill it with ATM machines, who cares?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm thinking of now the Robot Chicken sketch, though, where Mario goes into the world of Grand Theft Auto, and then, like, he tries to stomp on a turtle, but then it just, like, gets all bloodied and stuff, and then he sees, like, the first star of several stars pop up over his head, as, like, it's telling him that he's just gotten in trouble or something.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I do think it looks very nice. I think it's bright and it's colorful, and,
good animation aside from Mario's butt.
I think that's more of a design issue than animation, right? Like, they gave him a
true.
flat butt.
Like I said, bullying worked for changing Sonic. It should work for giving a butt to Mario and shutting him up.
That seems like also an easy thing to fix. It's like one like parameter you have to change, like butt thickness or something. Just enter a higher number. All right. So that was the Mario scene that we got to see.
Yay.
Other announcements. Armored Core 6, Fires of Rubicon, is coming in 2023. This is from Software, the makers of the Dark Souls and Elden Ring games. So they announced their new game is a return to the Armored Core series, a mech battling game series. This is really kind of cool because that was a franchise that seemed dead. And kind of abandoned, and the fact that they've been so successful with the Dark Souls games and so successful with Elden Ring means that they can kind of go back and make a new one of these. And, you kind of think if Elden Ring wasn't this runaway success, does this game happen? If Dark Souls 3 isn't a runaway success, does this game happen? And the answer is probably not, right? So that's kind of cool to see for the Armored Core fans. Diablo 4 has gotten a release date, June 6, 2023. So you can see that they were obviously going for that 666 and just missed it.
You missed it by that much.
Let's see. They announced crime boss Rockay City, starring Michael Madsen, Chuck Norris, and Vanilla Ice.
What a cast.
With a guest appearance from Pat Boone.
This is a cooperative crime first-person shooter, kind of in the style of the Payday games, just with some, I guess, star power. I don't know that. Who cares about Vanilla Ice anymore? Michael Madsen to a certain age group. Same thing with Chuck Norris. I'm just feeling like, is anyone under 20 care about any of these people?
Does anyone over 20 care about these people? I mean, I know there's some people that are going to be still like, oh, yeah, Chuck Norris. But that alone makes me not want to play it because I don't like Chuck Norris.
Okay, so the area where I grew up, they had jet ski competitions, and Vanilla Ice would go and be a part of those competitions.
Oh my gosh,
He fell off a
really?
jet ski.
Yeah, and so Vanilla Ice is still a big thing for many people when they go to see jet skiing competitions, I think.
I'm sorry.
That's such a weird niche.
Yeah.
That is fabulous.
I think he also went into real estate at
I
some
was like,
point.
he had like a real estate reality TV show for
Yeah.
a while.
He had some show where he was flipping homes.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's hilarious, Anytime I think of Chuck Norris, like, you remember a few years ago everyone was doing all the John Cena stuff? I'm like, John Cena wishes he was Chuck Norris. So that just makes me laugh and makes me want to like watch a Let's Play of it, but it certainly doesn't make me want to spend money on it.
I want to avoid this game like the plague.
I mean, a new crime cooperative game sounds kind of interesting, and I think there are probably actors you could have got involved with it that would have made it more interesting.
Michael Cera.
Yeah, Michael Cera, obviously.
That's who we're all thinking.
I just don't think any of these actors do it for the vast majority of people. Michael Madsen, sort of, I guess, just because of some of the films he's done, but the other two, just not so much. But
So if there's a problem, they'll solve it.
Unless you
I
need
guess-
the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and then it's go ninja, go.
Yeah.
it's stop, cooperate, and listen. So the fact that he's in a cooperative shooter makes a whole lot of sense.
It better hit bullseye because the kids won't play.
All this knowledge, this stupid knowledge of Vanilla Ice lyrics lodged in our heads for the past 30 years is finally useful.
I'm not getting these references, and I'm kind of okay with this.
Oh my
So
gosh.
this looks exactly like GTA 5, except there's a little bit of music in there, and instead of going ding ding, it's ding 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 ding. Now that's a reference for you.
The main thing I know Vanilla Ice for is that he tried to massacre Under Pressure. That's
I would
what know
say,
him
do we
for.
pay rights to Queen now, too?
Oh, no.
Just a tiny little difference in there. It goes ding ding and then ding.
Let's see.
I guess they're
Ice,
going to put
ice.
him on ice, baby.
This is more of an ice maybe. There, I made a joke. I made a Vanilla Ice joke.
Just think of all the puns people are going to be able to do in their reviews of this game.
Oh,
All
there's
the
going to be so
headlines.
many good one-liners.
So, All right, Star Wars Jedi Survivor has announced a release date of March 17th next year. So this is the sequel to, what was the original? Star Wars Jedi, I can't even remember what the original title was.
That one game.
That one.
It made a big impression on me, I see.
I keep thinking Jedi Outcast, but that's the Dark Forces game. So I actually forget what the subtitle for this was. Anyways, that's coming out, in 3 months. So it's kind of good that they finally started the marketing for that game.
Fallen Order.
Okay, Fallen Order. Yes, that's right. Baldur's Gate 3 is coming in August 2023. For longtime fans of that series. That's an old series getting a new entry. We will finally get to see it in August, maybe. That's a release date that I would be very surprised if they actually made. I see that one being missed. After Us was a post-apocalyptic platformer that looked pretty interesting and cool as your character was running, like flowers were kind of growing up around her feet. I think it was a her. But like the platforming was really neat, very like large stages, and it looked like that could be kind of a fun game. They announced Hades 2 for 2023, this time with a focus on Kronos as the big bad that you're trying to take down. That is also that team's first sequel. They've always been making wholly original games, so this time they're actually making a direct sequel to one of their games.
I've been curious to play the first Hades. I'm just bad at roguelike, but it looks cool.
That's a very fun game. That's a very cool game. Let's see. Judas is the new game from BioShock director Ken Levine. This looks very, very much like another BioShock game, and that's kind of interesting because at the time when he left, so he's not working for 2K Games anymore. He left and started this new company. The reason was they were going to do something entirely new, and they kept talking about narrative Legos. So that the way...
So Lego BioShock?
Well,
Starring
not
Chris Pratt.
not quite that. The way I understood it was that it would be like each time you played the game, it might have an entirely new story, and that the different little pieces of story would kind of fit together in new and unique ways. So like you're basically playing Legos with the story and everything to put it together. This showed nothing of that, so I'm guessing this is a different project. Maybe that project just isn't going forward or something. I feel like they would have hit that bigger if this was that same project. And, like emphasize, hey, there's lots of different stories or something, but we'll see. One of the biggest surprises, I think, of the night came in Bayonetta Origins, Syriza and the Lost Demon, which is a prequel to the Bayonetta series that's looking at Bayonetta's childhood. This is coming March 17th, and it's a big, bright adventure. People are making comparisons to Okami, which is that sort of Zelda-like game where you play as a wolf and everything. It looked really cool. It looked really neat. And I think some of the feedback online were Bayonetta fans being really mad because it wasn't a super dark, serious, another Bayonetta game. But I thought, this is kind of fun. You're doing a prequel to the dark witch game. Make it like all bright and colorful and kind of like, childhood fantasy. That looked kind of neat.
I think that's fine. Let it be its own thing. I'm not a big Bayonetta person, so maybe I shouldn't talk, but
I think my biggest thing with this is that it looks like a great game, but Bayonetta is very sexy and constantly talking about sex all the time. Her boobs are always out. She's naked half the time. And it feels weird doing a prequel going to her childhood for me. That's where I'm hung up on it. Like, the game itself looks great, but having Bayonetta's childhood is weird to me.
This is what you get for objectifying women, OJ.
Yes.
Yes, we all know you're want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's, you are someone who needs to be reminded that Oh man,
It does kind of make me think of like a Patton Oswalt skit where he's like imitating a conversation with George Lucas, and he's like talking about why he doesn't like the Star Wars prequels, and he's like, and it's like George Lucas is like, hey, do you think Darth Vader's cool? And Patton Oswalt's like, yeah, I love Darth Vader. I think he's awesome. It's like, he's like, well, do you know he's gonna be in the next movie? And Patton Oswalt's like, what? What's he gonna do? He's like, well, he's gonna be a little kid and he's going to be really sad. Like, that's kind of a bummer. He's like, and do you like Boba Fett? He's like, yeah, I love Boba Fett. Boba Fett's awesome. Is he gonna be in it? What's he gonna do? He's like, well, his dad's going to get killed, and then he's going to be really sad. You look really sad. Do you want some ice cream? It's like, yeah, ice cream
but this is a bright adventure, Ryan.
I think there's going to be some sadness in this by the end.
Absolutely not. How could there be?
We'll be sad when Chris Pratt does a voice in it.
Chris Pratt is Bayonetta.
I mean, if they recast.
They've already recast the actress once. So
Scarlett Johansson is his mom.
let's see. They announced Death Stranding 2. This is one of the big announcements. This has been rumored for a while. Obviously, Norman Reedus, the actor who was the voice actor and also the image for the main actor in the last game, had previously, I think we talked about this on this show, made comments like, oh yeah, we're working on the second one. And people were like, oh, he doesn't mean another Death Stranding. They're not making another Death Stranding. Well, they are making another Death Stranding. So they showed a brief trailer for that. I suppose it made sense to Death Stranding fans. I mean, it looked like another Kojima game, and so good for them. If you like Death Stranding, you're getting a whole nother game. Street Fighter 6 announced its release date. It's coming out on June 2nd with 3 different editions, and they showed a new trailer that showed a whole lot of just shenanigans for this game. So they showcased some of the characters. DJ was the one that stuck out to me. I'm not sure if those other characters were new or returning characters. I wasn't familiar with them. But they showed a lot of different little mini games and everything, and that seemed to hint back to that Capcom is really leaning in hard trying to make this a more widely acceptable game. Mm-hmm. Whereas Street Fighter V felt like it was very catered just to die-hard fighting game fans. This one looks like it's meant to be, really mass market it to the general audience. They're trying to bring everyone back in kind of in the way that Street Fighter 2 had this like wide acceptance and everyone was playing it. It looks like they're really going for that hard with this game.
And I look forward to like the reused beard grooming simulator. That's going to be one of those games.
I mean, I would not be surprised if there wasn't some like go get a haircut mini game. They showcase, this was one of the biggest surprises for me, Dead Cells Return to Castlevania DLC. So they're taking Dead Cells and they're adding Castlevania DLC. They showcase both, I guess it's Richter in it, and Alucard. And
that's interesting.
I love Dead Cells. Dead Cells is amazing.
Yeah, Dead Cells is a fantastic game, and when you think mixing that with Castlevania, it seems really cool.
Yeah.
This kind of made me think of the... did y'all ever play the Cadence of Hyrule game?
No, I haven't. I'm curious about it.
They made the game Crypt of the Necrodancer, where you had to attack enemies like on the beat of the music. Mm-hmm. And then so Nintendo teamed up with that developer and they made a Zelda spinoff. And it's a Zelda game, except it's with the gameplay and rules of Crypt of the Necrodancer. This reminds me a lot of that. This is, a Japanese company saying, hey, here's a really cool indie game. What if we let you play with our property in that? And that's cool. Like, that's a fun thing to do. Yeah. Particularly with Castlevania, which they're not doing anything else with, so you might as well do something like this.
There should be more games about dancing zombies and necrodancers.
I mean, one of the tracks in Symphony of the Night, Dracula on bass, ladies and gentlemen, because it sounds like a zombie rave, basically.
They also announced Vampire Survivors is out now on iOS and Android for free. I'm not assuming this is in some way supported by advertising, but I haven't actually downloaded and tried it myself yet. They also, this week, Vampire Survivors announced the Legacy of the Moonspell DLC that's going to add new stages, one new stage, new characters, new monsters, and new weapons. This is the first paid DLC they've had. They have done multiple updates that just added in additional content to that game. So, again, that game was selling for $3 originally. I think it's still $5 or less. So I'm happy to pay for DLC, assuming the DLC is a couple bucks as well. I don't mind that. So that's kind of cool to hear them continuing to support that game. So that was all the stuff from the Game Awards. We have a few other stories just in general news here. Xbox has announced that they are raising first-party game prices to $70. They have held out so far. PlayStation did that right from the beginning of this new console generation. So Xbox is now starting in the new year doing that as well, right before they actually start releasing games again.
Yeah.
So Starfield will be $70 on the Xbox.
Time to get my hammer and sickle.
300 ZeniMax game testers have announced that they are going to try to form a union. They have not held the vote yet, but they've announced the intention to try to unionize. Microsoft has said that they will recognize this union since they own the ZeniMax developers now. This seems like one of those situations where these developers are very much keenly leaning into the fact that Microsoft is currently facing I guess antitrust issues with their acquisition of Activision Blizzard. So this seems like if you are working for Microsoft right now is the perfect time to bring up any labor issues, because Microsoft is going to want to very quickly kind of stamp those down and get, and they don't want to be seen as being too big or, intolerant of employee issues, because they're trying to get the government to approve this big purchase. So, this is the perfect time. They can't say no to their employees unionizing right now, or the government's going to say, okay, well, maybe you don't need to own yet another game developer. So, hopefully that works out for them. This is a continued kind of series we see of more and more companies unionizing in video games. They are supposedly working on a Toe Jam and Earl movie of all video games to adapt into a movie. Toe Jam and Earl seems like one of the most bizarre ones.
That's definitely a choice that's been made.
I'm not against. I don't really know enough about Toe Jam and Earl to feel like one way or the other about it, I guess. Just, I did not expect of all games this would be one of the ones to be recently said, oh, movie.
The rapping aliens. That's all you need to know.
That's okay. That's all that you need.
That's really all there is to the Earl games.
I say we say that like there's anything more to it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know what movie you make of that. I guess a cartoon, I would assume. But
you make Space Jam, but with Eminem instead of
or Vanilla Ice.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, that's what you actually do.
Yeah, it is one of those interesting things. Which rapper do you team up with Toe Jam and Earl in a movie? Because you almost have to, right? Like you have to. That would be the whole idea, is to bring in rappers into that. And which rappers do you use?
They can merge universes and have Parappa the Rapper come in.
No, see, I would like that. I like Toe Jam and Earl. I just don't know. I don't know who the audience for this film is.
Yeah, is it going to be like modern and updated? Is it going to be like some like early 90s style rap? I'm curious.
Yes. Early 90s style rap. That's what they should totally do. Just lean into it, make it a period piece.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Let's see. Call of Duty.
That's even more reason to have Vanilla Ice.
Yeah, there you go.
There's never a good reason to have Vanilla Ice, I would argue.
Vanilla Ice, Hammer, just bring them all back.
There you go.
Call of Duty has Activision Blizzard struck a 10-year deal, or I guess Microsoft struck this deal, that says they will bring Call of Duty for the next 10 years to both Steam and Nintendo consoles. For Steam, that's not too big of a surprise. They already are putting Call of Duty on there. For Nintendo consoles, they haven't put a Call of Duty on a Nintendo console since the Wii U. So this is kind of a weird news, except when you take it into the context of they're trying to get this deal passed through regulators so Microsoft can acquire Activision. Sony is throwing a fit over this deal. Part of their fit has been about Call of Duty and whether Microsoft will make that an exclusive on Xbox. So now, Microsoft is going out to all the other console competitors and saying, hey, we're pledging 10 years. That's the same deal we offered to Sony. And then they can go to regulators and say, look, everybody else is happy with this. Sony is the only ones who are throwing a fit. Mm-hmm. So they're kind of painting Sony into a corner, I'm sure is the hope with this deal. Kind of a weird thing. Kind of weird to think of Call of Duty coming out on the Switch because the Switch is vastly underpowered to run these modern Call of Duty games. So it's weird to think what that might look like. Yuji Naka has been arrested again. So he was arrested before for insider trading. He's been arrested again for insider trading, this time related to Final Fantasy VII, The First Soldier. That was the mobile game that they made that lasted like a year and then they shut it down.
It's a mobile battle royale that was...
It happened.
It happened.
Did you actually play it?
I almost did. I downloaded it.
This is why it shut down in less than a year.
Yeah. I had such high hopes. When they first trademarked like Ever Crisis and The First Soldier, I had such high hopes. And then when they announced, I was like, oh, that, okay. Yeah, I can't say that I'm sad that it's gone.
When was this?
This was...
It shut down this year.
I'll say they announced it probably... Or they trademarked the title probably November of last year. Mm-hmm. I think the game came out, started in January. Okay. So this entire First Soldier thing has been within this calendar year.
It might have been at the Game Awards when the game was announced.
It might have been. I know.
Or it came out around that time. I don't know. But it was less than a year that the game was actually out.
Yeah.
Because I think I may have just merged this with all the other Final Fantasy titles that were coming out because, I didn't even know that there was kind of you said it was a MOBA?
It was
kind of?
mobile, and it was Battle Royale. So it wasn't you see the First Soldier for Final Fantasy VII, and you think, Sephiroth.
Yeah.
No.
Right.
Not at all.
Okay. Yeah, because
you're making your own soldiers, and...
You were like Shenra soldiers, right?
Well, yeah. I think the vibe I got from the trailers was kind of Overwatch-esque in terms of you're teaming up with people and you're doing the specific mission, but it wasn't like when you go through Final Fantasy VII before Crisis, that you're doing Turk missions, but you have a storyline.
Yeah.
This was just Battle Royale missions. Supposedly you can get to top rank, but it's you're not going to give me any of the characters I actually care about. You're not going to give me Sephiroth, you're not going to give me Rufus Shinra. What's the point?
Right.
Well, I think, OJ, you're hitting on a point that Square has really, to me, run into, in that they sometimes take a franchise and just put out too many games all at once.
Yeah.
And it's really easy for those games to slip through the cracks. I feel like they did that with Kingdom Hearts. Where people were like, wait, there was a 3DS Kingdom Hearts game? And then, I feel like they have certainly done that with Final Fantasy multiple times where they just announce 8 games all at once. Yeah. And you're like, wait, did that game ever come out? I don't remember that game. And, I think that's a problem for some of these companies, and it's kind of weird with Square because they have such a long history. You feel like there are other franchises you could go back and pick from and do something. Yeah, so Yuji Naka has supposedly bought shares of this developer that was developing Final Fantasy VII, The First Soldier, before it was publicly announced. You can't do that if you have insider information from working within the company. That is illegal. So he was arrested again. So finally, the world is punishing those who created Sonic the Hedgehog.
As it should.
So this is outside of the scope of what we're talking about, but why is insider trading illegal?
Because you're using knowledge. It's you have access to knowledge that the public doesn't. So when like a company is supposedly owned by the public, when there's shares in it,
Publicly traded companies.
yeah. And so if you that they should be, if their owners are the public, they should be answerable to the public first, theoretically.
Okay.
And so if you are using inside information before the public knows about it to be like, oh, let me buy it all up, that's a big no-no.
Yeah, I think, the idea is that people are supposed to be on equal standing, and like this would allow people to manipulate the markets in a way that would be damaging to the public.
Yeah.
Who did not have that information, right? So
That's a much better way of wording it than what I just did.
well, I think an easier way to think of it isn't so much the buying of stock, but think about it from the perspective of selling stock. What if you knew that this company was about to collapse and you went and sold all your stock, which you selling the stock sent off like a crash in the stock price, and so people lost a lot of money because of you, right? And so it's an attempt by the federal governments to prevent that from happening.
So it really kind of only hurts rich people.
Yeah, to some degree.
Okay.
I mean, but theoretically, right? Like even non-rich people have retirement accounts, right? So this could hurt your retirement account.
Okay.
Well, and if you have a financial advisor who, sometimes people get financial advisors where they're like, deal with my money. And so if you're, this is how we got the Great Depression, because banks were investing people's money into different stocks. And then when the stock market crashed and everyone raced to the bank, and the bank had been putting people's money into these places and didn't have it to hand to them.
Well, this is what just happened with the crypto exchange, FTX, is exactly that. They were taking people's money that they had $1 million worth of Bitcoin stored there, and they were taking that and investing that money. And then when rumors started that they were collapsing, people rushed, and they didn't have like $1 billion that people were asking for in exchange. And so,
It seems like it's just hurting rich people, but then it's very easy for it to cascade down.
Like, I'm just thinking, because, like, it's not illegal for a company to not pay somebody. Like, you can steal wages from your worker, and it's not illegal. But then this seems illegal. So it seems like it's hurting a different population.
Yeah. I think the problem is that it's not illegal to pay your people not living wage.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I mean, wage theft is illegal. It's just people figure
It's
out
not jail. No one's getting arrested for wage theft. People are getting arrested for insider trading. That's just, sorry, I'm just going down a long skew from.
Well, I mean,
yeah.
so like I think a lot of laws, it is if you have enough money, you can get away with them, or if somebody's not trying to make a point, right? So like the most high profile person to go to prison for insider trading was Martha Stewart. That's the reason she went to prison,
Right.
right? And so a lot of people have said, I think very rightly, that, come on, like you think she was the only person doing that at a big company?
Yeah.
There were other people doing this as well. Why did she go? Is it because she was a very successful woman? And so somebody wanted to make an example out of her, right? And that's not to feel sympathetic to Martha Stewart, right? But it is to say, like, these laws are sometimes applied haphazardly, or certainly selectively. Let's see. One last story here. Speaking of the law and federal regulation, the Federal Trade Commission has decided to sue to block the Microsoft Activision deal. Microsoft responded to this. While we believed in giving peace a chance, we have complete confidence in our case and welcome the opportunity to present our case in court.
That sounds very violent. Like, well, we believed in giving peace a chance, but now...
Yeah, I mean, we were fans of John Lennon. Now we are not.
Yeah, that's very... I mean, that takes guts.
Yeah. They're gonna Microsoft's gonna walk in with a Punisher logo on their suit.
Oh my god! It's gonna be Bill Gates with a Punisher logo.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is kind of surprising because most people thought they would just let it skirt through, and I think this is an example of maybe the Biden administration really kind of actually living up to their words that they want it to be more serious about these sorts of major acquisitions and mergers and sort of things. And I don't think they'll probably actually stop it, but they kind of want to make an example of Microsoft. And, and maybe the outcome of this is just more concessions from Microsoft, right? Like Microsoft has to sell off one of the parts of this, before they can make this acquisition. That was a deal that when Sony acquired Fox, they had to sell off the sports arm of Fox, because they already owned ESPN. They wouldn't allow them to own ESPN and Fox Sports at the same time. So maybe that's how this pans out. It doesn't seem like the deal will probably die entirely.
They just want to make Microsoft into the next Martha Stewart.
Exactly.
Well, Microsoft has more money than the FTC, so they can probably get better lawyers.
I mean, that's why these corporations get away with things, right? Yeah. Like they have more money and more lawyers than the federal government does. Yeah. So if you want to sue Apple, Apple's probably going to win that fight. And that's
I'm
probably
very depressed now.
Well, that's probably why at the end of the day, right? Like the real solution to a lot of this is at the congressional level to change the laws, because the individual departments don't have the money or the resources to fight these huge multinational corporations. So, yeah, so that does it for news. We got through all the news, quite a bit from the Game Awards, so that was cool. But speaking of the Game Awards, our big question for this week is, last week our big question was, who do you think will win some of these categories? So this week it's, which win were you surprised by? And Ryan, why don't we start with you?
So most of these don't surprise me. The one that did, though, was Best Sim/Strategy, and that would be to Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope. Because, one, I never looked at this game and expected it to win anything, honestly. It's not that I necessarily think it's bad or that it looks like it's I hate the Rabbids, but I think it looks like a terrible game or like it has terrible gameplay. But I feel like there was other strategy games that came out that I would have felt had a better shot at this. Like, I haven't played it myself, and I'm not that familiar with it, but just by, like, thinking of what they are, how much prestige they might bring, I would have expected something like Triangle Strategy to get this over Mario. I think those are similar enough games anyway that they would both count under this.
I wonder if it won because it was the most mainstream, and therefore more people played it, and when the critics were voting, even if they weren't particularly sim or strategy fans, they had played this because it was a Mario game.
Yeah. It still feels like such a weird one to win this. Yeah. But I see your point. And also I hate the Rabbids. They look like uglier versions of the Minions to me, which I already do not like the Minions because they become the annoying collective persona of boomers on Facebook.
But they came first. The Rabbids came first. The Minions are a ripoff of the Rabbids.
Now I'm just thinking of Elmer Fudd. Kill the Rabbids, kill the Rabbids, kill the Rabbids.
That's the crossover we need.
There we go.
I didn't realize that Okay, never mind. All right, okay, all right, Rabbids, you were the OG and you were the worst OG.
I mean, you can hold them responsible for giving us the minions, which seems like a crime unto itself.
No kidding.
But the Rabbids by themselves are great. I love them. I hate Minions, but I love the Rabbids. So Minions was a horrible knockoff of the Rabbids.
So now we know the reason why Ryan gets beat up in the parking lot after the podcast.
You just gave him a reason to beat you up today.
Maybe I need to give the Rabbids another chance. I just looked at pictures of them and I'm like, ugh.
Watch some of the little short film things from the Rabbids. They're pretty funny.
Okay, I'll give it a look.
Just don't think, oh, these are a ripoff of the Minions. Say Minions ripped these off.
Okay, I'll try that.
I don't know, but again, I do think that actually kind of counts against them.
Yeah,
They're responsible for the
I wouldn't
minions.
have minions if it wasn't for you guys.
I mean, both are Illumination.
Although I want to say that before either of them, there was Mega Man Legends Serve Bots, and I love those more. That's.
I do think, those definitely predate either of these.
Although I guess those are rip-offs of Lego, but you know what? The Serve Bots are cuter than Lego. Especially now that Lego has been voiced by Chris Pratt, so.
Turtles all the way down.
All right, OJ.
So I think that every single one of these is a surprise. That I thought Final Fantasy Strangers of Paradise was just going to win. It was just going to sweep at full speed.
You wanted the Game
Utter
Awards.
chaos.
Yeah.
You wanted the Game Awards to devolve into chaos.
Chaos. So
I definitely expected to win sports.
what happened, I think, is that they won every single award here, and then they created a time loop where they kept on winning them every single time. And so finally what they did is they got together and they made the game so bad that it wouldn't win anything else. Therefore, finally fulfilling and letting other games win rather than chaos winning.
That is a wild fan fiction / alt history take.
That is a beautiful fan fiction.
Right. So aside from that, though, I really wasn't. I wasn't surprised. I'm glad that Stray won some stuff. I was a little surprised that Vampire Survivors didn't get anything here. No, I thought that they would get like best debut indie, maybe, or best indie. So really, honestly, I'm surprised.
I'm gonna talk about that.
Okay, yeah. So I figured you would, but yeah, Bayonetta 3 getting best action, like I haven't heard anything about it being a good action game. I thought something else would have won that maybe, but I mean, good for her. She boot stomped someone into winning best action game. Yeah, other than that, really, I wasn't really surprised by any of the other winners. I thought they deserved it, at least as far as I know.
Right. All right, Alicia.
Yeah, I think similarly, like, a lot of these weren't a major surprise for me. I think there's always that part of my brain, in terms of, like, best esports, I always think, anytime I see League of Legends, that's going to win.
Yeah,
right.
So I think that one was a surprise for me, but not in terms of, like, I've never played Valorant or any of them, so it's not like I was like, wow, one was so much better than the other. It's just wait, League of Legends didn't win? I will say I'm also very happy that Kirby and the Forgotten Land won Best Family Game. That made my night.
Yeah, we talked about that last week. That was one of the predictions, that it might actually win that category, because everything else was a sequel, I think.
Yeah.
We talked about, and that was a new game to a sort. It was at least the first 3D outing for Kirby.
Yeah.
So, I think my biggest surprise is that Vampire Survivors didn't win anything. I guess I'm actually not that surprised. I think I'm more disappointed.
Yeah.
I feel like it is the most talked about game, other than Elden Ring. It's probably the most talked about game this year. And it had a huge impact on the industry. And for your end of the year game awards to not recognize that in any way other than a single nomination in best debut indie feels like a miscarriage of justice in some way. Like, I don't think it needs to necessarily win game of the year, but you're looking 10 years down the road, it seems like Vampire Survivors is going to be more significant than some of these other winners.
Yeah, that's going to be one that people look at and go, well, that was a snub.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because there's an entire genre now that has grown up around that game of games doing very similar things to it. And again, it wasn't the first, but it's the first one to kind of break through. So that very much does surprise me.
And like, so it could even have its own award, like Best Survivors Game, essentially,
Right.
because like there are dozens that came after it.
And some very good
already.
ones.
Yeah. So it could be its own category.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the other surprise, I mean, I think this is a problem. This is a problem with all award shows. Like seeing God of War Ragnarok kind of just win so many different categories. I think
Yeah.
is a little disappointing because you always want to see that love kind of spread around to a lot of different games. And, you know, there are
It
some...
feels like half of this list is Elden Ring and God of War Ragnarok.
Yeah.
Right. And I think there are things where you start looking at it and you go, okay, best narrative, cool. It probably deserves that. Best music, I don't know. You know,
Well-
best audio design, best performance.
Well, can someone explain innovation and accessibility? Like, I'm not doubting that God of War Ragnarok deserved that, but I'm just curious why they would earn that.
So Sony has gone to great extremes in recent years with their first-party games of addressing accessibility
Okay.
much more than anyone has really ever before. So that's everything from things like, say, colorblind modes within it to designing games where they can be played using fewer buttons for people who might have trouble with coordination and using their hands. I know one of the things that they talked about for this that one of my friends was really excited about because she gets motion sickness playing games is that they had actually had a whole feature that was like motion sickness adjustment, and you could like turn it on and it actually adjusted multiple things in the game to like try to reduce motion sickness for people while they play. So yeah, I mean, I understand why you would look at that and go, well, why God of War of all games wins this?
And like I said, I was that wasn't when I was like, oh, something else should have won, but I was just
Yeah.
like, why?
Yeah,
But
but
that is really cool. That's good to know.
Sony's been doing that with like The Last of Us and the Spider-Man games, just really doing a lot of cool stuff. The hope is, right, that they're doing all this in their own games and eventually they'll make it easier for smaller developers to include those features into their games, like maybe build that into the software development kit for PlayStation games where that might be easier for you to just kind of click a few buttons and turn that on for your games. But yeah, I mean, I could see that. I'm not saying that they necessarily were the most deserving, but they certainly did do a lot with that game.
Okay,
to help
that's
with
good.
that.
That's really cool. That's good to know.
But yeah, I mean, obviously this is a big chance for the game industry to kind of present its best, and I think for the most part it did that fairly well. And outside of Christopher Judge's speech that went on for like 30 minutes, which I am not joking. If you did not see that speech, like look it up. He gets up on stage and he does not get off. They start playing the walk-off music, and he does not get off stage.
Oh no!
Gotta just start going to commercial. pull what they did to Frank Sinatra on him.
It's the most awkward situation you've ever seen in an award show. It's really weird and awkward. And I really like Christopher Judge, but that's a really awkward.
How it went from a speech to a filibuster.
Oh, you like my performance? Well, watch this.
Well, somebody online made the joke about like, look, man, he just started his own podcast on stage.
He's like, you're questioning why I won Best Performance? Let me demonstrate.
Now, while I have this ventriloquist dummy, I will perform it while drinking this glass of water.
Well, they had Robert De Niro present the award, which was kind of weird to begin with.
Why?
I mean, Robert De Niro gets up on stage and the first thing he says is, I don't play video games. And you're like, great.
Oh my
But
God.
when I do,
But I mean, this was like the first award of the show, and he gets up there and says that. But then when Christopher Judge gets up there, De Niro starts to walk off, and Judge like kind of grabs him by the shoulder and pulls him back and hugs him and everything. And it was a very sweet, like lovable moment because you're like, Christopher Judge is an actor who has a long career. He was in the Stargate TV series. He's done lots of other work. He's not the type of actor that's winning Oscars or anything. And so him being able to be up there with obviously somebody that most actors idolize in Robert De Niro and be on stage and have this moment, very sweet, very lovable, like great moment. And then Christopher Judge just extended it forever.
Oh, man.
So,
For now on, like uncut extended editions of movies will be called Christopher Judge editions.
I mean, it was insane. So
Instead of the Snyder cut, the Judge cut.
oh,
So he tweeted too, "Thank you for all your congratulations. I was cut off before I could finish."
I hope that's a self-aware joke.
No, he said he posted what other stuff he did want to say. He said, "I wanted to thank my ride or die beautiful wife who held it down when everything else was at its most difficult."
Wait, he talked for 30 minutes and he didn't thank his spouse?
Oh, he was in trouble. That's why he
Somebody was
tweeted
sleeping
that.
on the couch that night.
That's why he tweeted that. He was in trouble.
Yeah, I got cut off, sweetie. Don't watch the actual awards. Don't watch the speech. Just know I got cut off.
I got bored halfway in and I wasn't mentioned.
Don't watch the 30-minute speech. Just read my tweet. That's all that matters.
I mean, look, I understand being put on the spot and you forget somebody, and sometimes
But
you
your
forget.
wife.
Well, sometimes you forget the one person you definitely should thank.
Kratos was the god of the couch that night.
But yeah, I mean, overall, a fun show, and I think it did do a pretty good job of spotlighting some games. And like, even though Vampire Survivors did not, having Stray, because that's a very, I feel like, accessible game and a game that drew a lot of interest from people who maybe aren't super into video games normally.
That's actually the one of these that I haven't played that I'm the most interested in trying.
Oh, it's fantastic. It really is fantastic.
All right. Well, that does it for this episode. Thank you for tuning in. I think we might be back next week for one final episode before break.
One more time.
I think it'll depend on everyone's schedules and everything. But thanks for listening. You can find more at SalukiGames.com, and we'll be back soon with another episode.